Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Deep Thoughts. This is episode 200. We have finished season 2. Episode 199 is encoding inside. So this is called the season 2 index. Last year I called it the glossary, and I was using the wrong word. So what this is you're new, you never heard this channel before, or for whatever reason you haven't heard season 2 episodes. And so what I do is I go through 100 episodes and just briefly give you the footnotes of why I made the episode, whether or not I think it's a good episode or a shitty episode, and just sort of help you guys out. So without further ado, let's move along. So the very first episode of season 2, 101, is about MK Ultra, which is a real clandestine program by the government that they started using Nazi resources after World War II. And it was really trying to figure out how to control the brain, how to control the mind through torture, through sound waves, through all kinds of different techniques. It actually ended up yielding Manchurian candidates like Sirhan and a few others. They actually ended up paying for people who were damaged by the program. It's one of the only things the government's ever done that was really bad, and they had to acknowledge that they did it. But they got away scot-free. So, the precursor to this show, which I had a co-host that we did just a straight-up podcast, was called MK Ultra Radio, which you're still getting the podcast from that domain for Deep Thoughts Radio. And so I just thought it's time to go in and go deep on it, because when we covered it in the other show, they just were kind of bouncing around too much, which is why I made this show in the first place. 102 is Holographic Universe. And what I do is I go through the book Holographic Universe and a lot of the principles of what that means, because there's a lot of, I think, folks that can feel this other reality and it's not another reality, but it's the way we come together using frequencies and what have you. And there's a lot of implications once you understand that we are the combination of a bunch of frequencies, that you actually gain control over your life in doing so and understanding that. I want to apologize ahead of time if this is all windy in the mic. 199 is also windy. Summer's moving in, hot air is pushing cold air out. 103 is about growing up. There's very few views because no one wants to be lectured to. However, there's two folks that I have found in the world. There's a person who is striving to create a version of themselves that they would call being grown up, and then there's a bunch of people that don't want to be preached to because they understand they haven't grown up. Of course, there's the third, which they do know they're totally well-formed and fully formed, and they don't need to be talked at by anyone. So these are just some of my thoughts. My angle on the whole thing is that I grew up in the Midwest, and in the Midwest you have a lot of wisdom and knowledge handed down from older people. You know a lot more people in the Midwest than you ever know in the city, like hundreds of times more people in a small town. If you're in a town of 10,000 people, the likelihood that you know 5,000 of them is pretty high. But if you grew up in a town like Los Angeles, where all the surrounding people is about 25 million people, I think you'd be lucky to know 100. Like, know them, wave at them, know their whole family history, who's related to who, and et cetera, et cetera. So there's just a lot of things I had imparted on me when I was a kid that I think it's missing from the big world. 104 is about the alien invasion hoax. Werner von Braun's assistant in the late 70s, prior to his passing, I believe in 78, said that he claimed that the government was going to try and create a fake alien invasion to kick off a new world order by making everyone panic inside the barn. So I go through who is actually rumored that this would actually occur, and then we just start dissecting how on earth would this actually be done. Let's just say it's our job. And we have to fake alien landings, aliens and UFOs in the sky. And so it's actually a fairly, what I would say, healthy exercise in perhaps dismissing the option or giving it some validity. And then if it ever happens, if you've seen this episode, you won't panic as much as other folks will be panicking. 105, the age of robotics. This episode is about this coming age of robotics where we're going from factory floor robots that aren't the slightest bit, formidable to the ones that are now going to start policing the streets, writing you traffic tickets, perhaps, conducting riot suppression activities. In Dallas, when they had the shooter in Dallas last year, they killed him with a robot. So I talk a lot about THX 1138 as well, which is, I believe, a full prophecy of what the world will be if we don't make some serious changes. 106 is character development. This is for those of you who are interested in writing screenplays. I have probably 4 videos on screenplays and a screenplay list. It doesn't get watched that much because obviously you guys are coming in for a different realm of information. What I will tell you about the whole thing, going back to episode, I believe it's 7 and it says it's 8, unfortunately, unless you're watching on VidMe where I corrected it. If you think to yourself, well, I don't screenwrite, there's no reason for me to watch this, I would suggest you go back to that season 1, episode 7, and watch it, because you may actually have a story in you. And even though I'm talking about the format of screenplays, it's completely indicative of writing in any format that you want, from novel to stage play to teleplay. So you may have a talent in you that you just are unaware of, and I would love to see what you create. 107, positivity. Again, not a lot of views. It's sort of a feel-good self-help episode. But the idea is, in this episode, is that we know we need to be positive to get through life, but some people don't know they need to be positive to get through life. And sometimes without actually saying it, hey, being positive is an art. Being positive is something that you can pretend to be, and your body will follow. Your emotions will follow. You can put a smile on your face when you don't feel like smiling, and suddenly it'll make you feel better. So I go through sort of my coming of age and my sort of awareness that this was something you need to discuss. Otherwise, you don't really have a grasp of the benefits of it. 108, alien intent. This is sort of breaking down the idea that we love to believe in aliens because it's just alluring, right? I mean, the idea of meeting potentially a race from another planet that's millions of years old or another dimension or what have you. But what we really do is say, what would they need from mankind? By putting ourselves in their shoes, we can reverse engineer some basic thoughts about perhaps what we would look forward to if they were to arrive here, and sort of dismiss some of the low-hanging fruit of what they probably wouldn't be interested in. And this is obviously peppered into a lot of other alien episodes, but this is going straight at the jugular. 109 is the apocalypse. The apocalypse is something that, preppers get into. I may actually do an episode on preppers in season 3. But this sort of breaks down, what would an apocalypse be? Why would it be brought about? How would it be brought about? And, perhaps how will we, survive it? Because, again, we talk about a lot of things for the romantic arc of the storyline, but we don't really talk about the metadata and the subtext of what we're talking about. Who would do such a thing? What would they do? What would it mean? Etc. Right? 110 is reptilian aliens. For any of you who've studied David Icke, you have definitely bumped into this theory. Even if you don't know about David Icke in the UK, he's the one that really brought it in the forefront. Reptilian aliens have been part of cultures for thousands and thousands of years. And so what I do is I break down sort of where this came from, where the designation reptilian came from, out of, Carl Sagan's R-factor brain. Essentially, those who run the world tend to be very stoic and obviously don't seem to have any empathy or sympathy for humanity. And so calling them reptilian aliens is very easy because they tend to behave in that R-factor brain type. But we talk about the principles of shape-shifting, what that would mean, the idea that the queen is a lizard and all these other things, and how they're supposedly slipping out of their shape on TV. We talk about those goofy videos on YouTube where the compression codec has failed because someone had a shitty connection, but they're recording their screen, and every time there's an artifact in their face where they move, it creates seemingly, slit eyes and a bunch of other artifacts. And I break it down for you so you understand that is not them shape-shifting back into their native form. That's just a video codec problem. 111, fake space programs. You know you love it. We all know that JPL and NASA are essentially in the picture selling business, making $60 million a day that they can then filter into military research and what have you. Their idea is that you would never pay for a war machine constantly building up where they're doing missile research and Tomahawk missile stuff, right, and Moab shit. And so we essentially break down where their Achilles heel is, and there's several Achilles heels. And obviously this is metabolized up into what we now know as flat Earth fodder, because when you can't trust your space program and your mouthpieces like Neil deGrasse Tyson and Bill Nye simply are experts in memorizing and repeating things and not really using their brain, you get a really fucked up society, right? 112, Destination Dream. This continues a dream series that I started in season 1. This is really about what is the dream world that we're in. We go to sleep. What are the attributes of your dreams? And, I always pose the question, why do we dream? When we're asleep, our bodies are completely functional. Our brains are completely functional. Yes, they're sort of on a reduced energy consumption model. But I think that in parsing the dream series on this show has actually brought forth so many amazing correlations between us as people. We don't really sit around and compare dream notes. And this show's been able to get people to talk about stuff and compare things, and it's really fascinating. 113, Perception. I'm just going to go real quickly through this one. This episode is all about being aware that you have a perception which creates a paradigm. And I've got a paradigm episode coming, so I'm not going to duplicate too much on this. But this is to make sure that you understand that everything that you see is based on your eyes, your ability to take in the 5 senses that you have, and create a reality out of it, essentially. The next one up is a special report called No Forest on Flat Earth. For those of you who are aware of this, there was a Russian gentleman that proposed an interesting theory that a lot of the mountains that we see that are made of silicone hexagons are actually the byproduct of big giant silicon trees that used to litter the earth, although there's very few stumps to prove them that they exist. And I essentially got into it. I listened to the original episode when it was in its original Russian before it was subtitled. So it wasn't the most complete review of his theory because it was sort of hard to understand him, but I think I got the gist of it. But I call bullshit inside my special, just so you know. 114, Alien Abductions. This is just based on the absurdity in my mind that, the people like Whitley Strieber will have you believe that all of the mysteries of mankind and humanity are inside our assholes, and that aliens have to come down and do massive exploration anally to figure out where, what we're hiding up in there to, keep us human. I can only imagine that Whitley Strieber has some sort of anal regiment, and in order to explain it to his proctologist, he came up with this idea. Next up is a special report on the Netflix original series, Stranger Things, which I was very captivated by, and it went around Southern California in just a whirlwind of people saying, oh my God, you got to see this, you got to see this. Some of the folks that watched this show were very concerned, but what was about some of the negativity. Now, MK Ultra, episode 101, is actually inside the Stranger Things show. It's an MK Ultra program, but the girl does have some, obviously, supernatural capabilities, and so they sort of whitewash it, but they talk about MK Ultra in the show. And so a lot of folks were concerned about the negative imagery going out to the public. My opinion is it was good that if anyone watches Stranger Things and then types into YouTube or Google MK Ultra, they're going to be heavily educated on the extent of which the intelligence agencies will go to figure out the human mind, including torturing human beings. 115, existentialism. I'm going to tell you that I'm personally extremely proud of this episode. You know, what I do is I toy around with the notion that, you know, what if one of the biggest secrets of the universe is that you actually control it? Your instance of the universe, and you believe you can't because you think that other people own other areas of their life, and perhaps they do. But if nothing else, your halo influence in your own life might be heavily controlled by you, which will then give you amazing control of your future. 116, Finding Story. This is another screenplay writing episode. It's only got 156 views, which is really funny. One of the hardest things you do when you're writing a screenplay or a story of any kind is to find your story. You have a premise in your head, which is maybe someone travels through time, but you don't have a reason why anyone gives a shit. And this is an episode based on this. And I should say I was writing a script at the time, which was very intense, and a sequel to an existing franchise. And so I was knee-deep in this and trying to figure out why no one cared about the second sequel so that they would care about the third sequel, which is the one I wrote. 117, The Physics of Symbolism. This breaks down that we all know about symbols in our world. We know about sacred geometry. But what I put forth is, you know, when you draw something in the ground or carve something out of stone, you are controlling the frequencies in the universe when they hit that shape, right? So you put a pentagram on your forehead, you are now disturbing light being absorbed into your head to the degree that the ink can disturb the frequency. So, you know, there's a possibility that there's a real science to manipulating reality with symbols, but if nothing else, the warning goes out: be careful what you put on your body, be careful what you put around your house, because you may be drawing certain frequencies that are bad for you. And it may not be related to a devil or anything. It just might be that when you mess with frequencies at certain stages, at certain places, and to certain degrees, you may actually end up causing yourself harm. So be careful. 118, GMO foods. Genetically modified organisms is a new product created by a company called Monsanto, because they make a product called Roundup, which is made from a chemical called glyphosate. GMO foods, in a nutshell, is essentially the ability to reduce world population through sterilization, because you're eating a terminated gene sequence. You're also eating a toxin which can give you cancer if you don't take your vitamins, and it's something we should stop at our earliest convenience. 119, Cognitive Dissonance. A very popular word that none of us knew until YouTube existed, as my friend Jed Skeptic would say. This is the ability to look at reality, see it for all that it is, and then bullshit yourself that it's not, because it's an inconvenient truth for you. Once you build up the motor inside your mind to lie to yourself, there's nothing that will stop the lies from manifesting. When someone tells you something that doesn't make any sense, there's a warm fuzzy in there, because you got a machine in your brain, a cogwheel collection in your mind that says, oh yeah, I love it when I totally lie to myself, when I double talk myself, double speak myself, right? So that's what this is about. 120, Fictional Realities. Well, we all know people have those, right? This is essentially a deep dive into the art of creating fictional realities so that we can deal with life. And it's obviously become a disease. On one side, it doesn't harm anyone half the time, where you just want to pretend like you just have a false ego that helps you get through every day. Anyone who's a celebrity has to deal with fictional realities, because they look in the mirror and put, they take craps, they put one leg in a pant leg at a time, and they know that they're normal on the inside. They just have a talent that makes them feel bigger than life. But it's now become a disease where it's fake news. It's, folks that don't want to deal with anything that's remotely tough in life. 121, False Flags. Man, who doesn't know what a false flag is? This is when your government conspires against you to create an event that is blamed on one group, but it's actually self-created such that you will rationalize war. It's almost always that case. Or they're trying to put you in such a state of trauma that they can program your mind, which is where you need to go and look at Season 1, Left Brain, Right Brain episode. 122, Finding God. This isn't a religious episode. This is really about the various debates of who God could be, who God might be, and sort of the path that you would take to take what you know and what you've experienced and find some celestial central consciousness within your ability to believe. 123, Surveillance. Well, I made an episode in Season 1 that's called How They Spy on You, and this is essentially a more focused advancement on specifically the surveillance that's in the world. For those of you who worry about watching this show, belonging to a Facebook group and getting sucked into the system, just be aware that I'm aware of that, and I duly apologize and hope, and pray at some point we have an option that isn't so embedded. 124, Calming Your Soul. I've had an amazing response from this episode from people that need it. And if you feel like you need your soul calmed, that you're a little bit more tight-chested or what have you, based on the reviews that I've gotten from this episode, it's quite effective for giving you the means to recognize what's making you stressed out and to give you means to calm down that stress, because you don't deserve any of that, and it'll make you sick eventually. 125, Getting Back Up. The key to life is getting back up. As Samson said in the HBO series Carnival, dying is the easy part. Living's the hard part. And that's all about getting back up again. Your humble narrator has gotten up several times in his lifetime, and so I do feel like I come with a certain level of expertise for at least what I need to get up. I've had a pretty good response from this one as well. The next episode was a Flat Earth, the PSYOP special report. And this is sort of where a lot of people are now. They're in between the globe Earth and Flat Earth, and they accuse the Flat Earth of being a PSYOP. And so what I do is I go through the benefits of it being a PSYOP. What on earth would someone gain by making us distrust NASA and JPL, distrusting, the heliocentric globe model? It's a fascinating thing, and there's this document called The Cognitive Infiltration, I believe I talk about in this episode, which was posted by one of you, thank God. And so we just review it. 126, Secrecy. This is based on a conversation I had with a bartender. And she kicked off a very interesting conversation about how she can't get into religion because there's too much secrecy around religion. She's really talking about the Vatican for the most part, but it really kicked off the idea that we do have secret societies which we all sort of, poo-poo, and we say, look, we don't want to be involved with that. But we have a lot of normal institutions that exercise complete secrecy, and I'm not talking about Apple Computer hiding the iPhone 8. I'm talking about, religious institutions that have these coveted secret chambers and rooms and processes and that sort of thing. 127, Friendship. It sounds foo-foo, right? It sounds a little self-help, kumbaya. Trust me, it's got value for you. The main thing is that we miscategorize people all the time as being friends, best friends, when they're really just acquaintances. The other thing I get into is, before you call someone your friend, there should be something that defines that. It's not that you just like being with them. You are willing to sacrifice for them a little bit. For best friends, there's almost nothing that you won't do for them, and you have a yearning every day to be with them. And some of you are married to them. Thank God. 128. This is a really popular episode. It's called Does Space Exist? What I put forth in this episode is that I have tons of buddies that have been in the special effects industry their entire lives for 25 plus years, and none of them have dreamed about being in space, even though they create all the space scenes and all the television shows, all the movies that you've seen. And I think out of every single person that's commented, we've only had like 2 or 3 people claim to have had a dream in space, being on a Star Trek Enterprise. I talk about the fact I've seen every single Star Trek episode from 1967 all the way up to 2005, at least twice, if not 4 or 5 times, and I've never had a single dream about being on the Star Trek Enterprise. But if I play Fallout 4 for 2 or 3 hours, I'm dreaming about being in a post-apocalyptic world. So what's the problem with dreaming about space? Perhaps it doesn't exist. 129, consciousness. Well, what is consciousness is basically what we go through with this, and I'm just going to leave it at that. 130. This episode's done really well. It's called Them. Now, a lot of times you'll find yourself in a conspiracy conversation and you're talking about banking cartels, royal families, and various other kind of deep state shadow government agencies, and them is who we're talking about. And the people on the other side of the conversation will sometimes say, well, who's them? And they think they got you, right? They don't have to deal with reality because they've got a little loophole for pussing out and running away, right? This episode talks all about who they are and their motives and what they're really scared of, which is us taking away things from them. Which honestly, if they just leave us the fuck alone, we would leave them alone. 131, mass media. Ooh boy. This was recorded way before the election was super duper hot in the form of a fake news accusation. So this gets at essentially where media was before mass media took over our perception of the world. And it's a really good precursor to a couple other episodes that are coming here. 132, fabric of society. Well, whether or not we like it or not, we're all connected. And there are a lot of forces and thought processes and paradigms that we adopt to consider ourselves a society. It's a very fragile connection that can be easily, I think, tampered with, which is where false flags come in and mass media comes in, coincidentally. And so that's what this episode's about. 133, morality. This is really about the idea that we don't want to be tied down and have someone preach to us and tell us what we can and can't think, right? But morality, degradation unchecked, can lead to some severe problems for society, right? So you watch a little bit of porn, you're like, hey, I just watched a little bit of porn, it's cool. Unchecked, that vector goes way off the rails really quick and starts really fucking up society, creating pedophiles, creating rapes, because in their mind they want something that no woman wants to give them, no child should ever be involved in, and so they cross that line. And that's where we've got to take some lessons from our elders. The reason why everyone was uptight in the 50s was that morality had become this hand-me-down group of wisdom, which, although brilliant in the way society would actually prosper, it wasn't well explained because it had been passed down so much, we didn't know why we were passing it down. And this gets at the heart of the matter. 134, episode I'm fairly proud of, the Roswell UFO crash 1947. I will simply say this is all about the crash. I went into this with a complete angle and theme to debunk the shit out of this, and I had my ass handed to me to the point I now believe that something did crash and something was out of this world. I do not believe it was a weather balloon. I don't believe it was some covert aircraft blamed on the Russians. I link in the description all of the videos that I believe were the interviews that were the most compelling. So enjoy. 135, dreamed reality. This episode is about potentially our dreams are another reality. We think we live in this reality because it's so clear, it's so vivid, the five senses are pumping. But when you go into a dream, obviously you lose a lot of your senses, especially the instrumentalities of your body. So we analyze the difference between the two. 136, a cashless society, or cashless society. There is a giant force to take away cash from our pockets. On one level, it makes complete technical sense. Why the hell would you want to have a pocket full of change? Why would you want to have to carry a $20 bill and all this kind of stuff? In a perfect society with good people running the world, empathetic, non-reptilian people running the world, this would be fantastic. I totally support it. The problem is the good people don't run the world. The assholes run the world, and therefore the ramifications on society is horrifying. That they could control you completely by controlling your credit stick, right? 137 is called The Awakening. This is really what it sounds like. For those of you who've gone from a state of almost, comatose, matrix living to a side where you realize maybe you can't trust what you thought you could trust. There's a lot of emotional arcs with that, and there's a lot of problems with trying to inform your loved ones that you're going through this experience. And so this is an episode for you to try and compare notes for what's happened to me personally and what I've heard has happened to other folks, to hopefully soften the blow and give you some tools to be awake but not be perceived as crazy. 138, empathy. Empathy and sympathy are often confused. Feeling sorry for someone is sympathy. Feeling what they feel is empathy. There are forces, whether it be intentional or non-intentional, that are successfully erasing empathy out of this world. No one gives a shit about anyone else anymore. And they don't think about anyone else's feelings when they do something. 139, interdimensional life. Well, aliens could come from another planet or they could come from another dimension. In this episode, we look through all of the implications of what that would mean. Where would they be? How would they be here? Perhaps they're here, where they're in a different frequency. Perhaps they're observing us, tampering with us. And again, we always reflect back on, if you had this capability of traveling through dimensions, what on earth would you need from mankind? 140, freedom from religion. Religion is a control apparatus to make us tax ourselves. That's why it was originally created, is to keep the people from being chaotic. It builds morality into behavior. As I had it described to me, religion is the first time that someone could get married and stay connected, because there was a paradigm of commitment and there was a paradigm of protection, whereas someone is not supposed to cheat on someone else. But this also frees you up from being controlled by a religious apparatus. It doesn't say that you have to give up religion. It just says you should have a perspective of what it is to be perhaps a spiritual person, but outside of the paradigm of man-made stories. 141, Code of Man. Okay, so say you're free from religion. Then what is going to hold together the morality of man? We don't have a code of man that is taught in schools. A lot of folks know about common law, do no harm. This is what this is about. If we're going to free ourselves of man-made religions, which are there to tax and repress and to control, then we have to replace it with something that is coming from a secular standpoint. It doesn't erase spirituality, but we have to have some basic rules, which we do have laws, we have constitution, we know how to behave, but most of those are derived from religion. So there are benefits on both sides. 142, alien splicing. This episode is about the fact that the missing link from anthropology is massive. There's no explanation of how we went from hominid to Homo sapiens sapien. It does appear, and I've said it in just a recent episode, it does appear that we are spliced, that we have been created almost instantaneously in the timeline of this planet, whether it be God or an alien. Something used what was here to create a basis for what we are. There's genetic blockers and stuff that I talk about as well. If you dig 142, definitely see episode 2 from season 1, Evolution. 143, From the Void. This is a concept put forth by a philosopher, Jean Baudrillard, who's a French philosopher, who said that voids are wonderful because voids create invention. He talks about in the book Walt Disney being stuck in Missouri and having to, in order to entertain himself and create something exciting for his mind, he became an animator. First an illustrator, cartoonist, then an animator. And we have to allow voids to exist in our life in order to invent. With cell phones, especially, it kills the void. It kills society's invention. America has been known as a country that invents. Europe is a set of countries that invents. If we get too strung out on cell phones and other bullshit pastimes, we will train our children to be as stupid can be. And believe me, you don't want to live in that world. 144, being offended. In this episode, I basically assert that only children get offended. Adults don't get offended, and what I say is being offended is a bullshit emotion. You're either pissed off or you're not. But being offended adds a little bit of extortion onto being angry. Being offended says, you offended me, Therefore, you owe me a prize. And that's all that is. Think about the presidential campaign of 2016. Hillary Clinton runs on a platform of being offended. And you owe her the presidency because you can be offended. You can't hire someone else to do the job because he offended. Right? 145, focus. Focus is something like positivity. Someone has to remind you that you must do it. There's a great book out there that I'm reading right now called The One Thing. And I'm going to probably do an episode on it, but it is essentially focus. Pick something at the beginning of your day that is imperative. It is the most important thing that you can accomplish today to get the biggest goal that you have in your life, and just focus on it. But I talk about my mentors teaching me about this. 146, the dream realm. Sort of an extension from Destination Dream. We simply break down all of the elements of what makes up a dream. Why, how is the dream realm different than this realm? And again, what is reality between the two? 147, take in charge. This one is actually also done extremely well with the folks that like the calming your soul and getting back up video. Taking charge is another one of these things that someone just simply needs to whisper it in your ear every once in a while, tell you to your face, it's time to take charge. You've been waiting around for someone to give the command. Let's give the command. Let's roll. And sometimes that's all it takes. So this is my little gift to you to hopefully get you to get up and go, right? 148, do atomic bombs exist? This is one of my favorite subjects. I just was talking about it last night, but the idea is, did they fake the atomic bombs that we have seen go off around the world simply using conventional TNT? Hiroshima and Nagasaki should be absolutely radioactive today, but they're not. They're fine. A lot of pictures of firebomb Tokyo were actually passed off as Hiroshima. So there seems to be a correlation between what they claim to have happened from an atomic bomb and what has actually happened to Tokyo versus using firebombing. So we're not sure, but I break it all down in there. 149, patience. We all know we need it. We don't like to be lectured about it, but this episode is actually done extremely well with the comments of people who've actually finished the episode to say that it really does call out the various elements of what patience is. 150, marketing. Probably the most definitive conspiracy body on planet Earth is a marketing department. What is their job? To sell you bullshit you don't need and convince you that you need it. If the definition of a conspiracy is two or more people conspiring against another one or more people, then marketing departments are exactly that definition. So what I try to do is pull your head out of marketing so you can see it. So it's like They Live by John Carpenter. You see the brainwashing within marketing, and you avoid developing loves for things that you don't need so you can save your money and do something else much more powerful in your life with that same resource. 151, telepathic cells. This isn't my idea, but someone noticed that the double helix, created by nucleic acid that makes your DNA, is shaped exactly like an antenna. We know that the universe is nothing but a ton of frequencies. So it would seem that we have the ability to communicate between us, and we know this from experiments, without actually communicating with words. And so we are a hive mind, right? And we could give you existentialism in a few episodes coming up here. You'll also realize that you actually control the world. When you learn a new word and you start hearing it all the time, it's not simply because you now recognize the pattern, it's because you're projecting it into your future. 152, the shift. This actually did way better than I thought, and it was an episode that I created where we're now getting to a point in society we can see fake news. We do know that our politicians are shit, and I think that with, obviously, the recent changes in America, we're seeing a shift. It's put up or shut up. Don't say you're our leader and don't lead us. Don't say that you're an American president and don't do fucking dick for the country, right? Doesn't matter which side of the fence you're on. We've had some doozies. 153, heaven and hell. I think it's absurd. The definition of heaven and hell is utterly absurd in both cases. There's no need to be punished forever for anything that you did, and there's no reason that you'd ever want to be in any nirvana state of pure happiness constantly. It doesn't make any sense. You wouldn't be able to know what happiness was after a few hundred years, because unless you rotate through all the emotions on the color wheel of thought and feeling, you're not going to notice what positivity is versus negativity, right? 154, life before 9/11. For those of you who are at least 40 years old or above, you will remember that life was pretty fucking awesome before 9/11. The problem is that we haven't taken up any objectives to erase all these tyrannical control mechanisms like the TSA. It needs to fucking go away. You know, for people that bitch and moan about a border north or south on the American soil, but they keep the TSA, it's fucking ridiculous. You're trying to catch terrorists coming into the country, but you don't care if they walk across the border. Give me a break. We need to work to undo everything that's happened since 9/11 in terms of eroding our laws, getting rid of surveillance, the violations of the 10 Bill of Rights. 155. Throughout all the episodes, I will mention references to Twilight Zone episodes, and so I thought I'd take time out to really call out the episodes that I think are fantastic. If you have not watched every single Twilight Zone episode, which I think is around 190, you're in for a treat. And even if you have, and you haven't watched them since you've awakened, you'll be absolutely shocked at how unbelievably awake Rod Serling was, who made the show. And it's Rod Serling, not Rod Sterling. I see that in the comments every once in a while. 156, Fame. This is a garage episode. I remember this. It actually has quite a few views. This is actually very important if you've ever sought out fame. I have been very blessed in my lifetime to work with very famous people, and I mean ridiculously famous people, household words. I see their lives, and I see the ones that have dealt with it beautifully, and I've seen folks get eaten alive by it. And so in this episode, I re-itemize what fame is, and I dismiss virtually every element of it until you hopefully no longer have the desire to be famous. You have the desire to accomplish something in your life, and you know that if you do create something in your life that's wonderful, fame follows, all right? 157, Finding the Matrix. There's a lot of talk about the world being a simulation. And so what this episode's about is to itemize what we see in this reality and see what part of it actually feels like a computerized matrix. You know, and regardless of how you want to parse reality, it does behave like a computer. It does. It doesn't mean we're in a goddamn computer, but who cares if we were? 158, Betrayal. Very simple. If you've ever been betrayed and you are struggling with that, the byproduct and the damage of being betrayed in your life, and you want to be free from that feeling, you want control over your life, this episode's for you. Your humble narrator has experienced several versions of betrayal. 159, called Tribal News. I eventually did make a fake news episode, but Tribal News is the precursor to say we are tribalistic about where we get our news from, essentially who we allow to paint reality in our lives, right? I think that we have made the mistake of allowing too many people the privilege of telling us what our reality is. And I think we've overblown what we need to know about other parts of the world. But this is essentially an episode about the loyalty to your news source and how to free yourself from it. 160, Atomic Life. This really talks about the fact that all mass in the universe that creates us potentially has an equal role in communicating, because let's face it, we are beings that can store information about our lives, and we are beings that can communicate information that we have attained. And somehow we say that my barbecue out here and a couple furniture items I have here and the whole house itself doesn't have that capability. But when you really break down the fact that we're all made of the same stuff, there's no reason why it shouldn't be. 161, Aliens Among Us. This really talks about all the theories that we have aliens that live here on Earth, the claims that we have, 27 species of aliens, some that look like us, some that don't, some that, again, walk among us, and they have like bizarre eyes and noses and that kind of stuff. It's kind of funny when you look at it. But I also break down essentially how fragile is the definition of alien life. What is that? Is it a weird shrimp, or is it something that has to have almond eyes, right? 162. This is an episode I'm fairly proud of called Paradigms, and it's all about how we form reality through creating rule sets that become paradigms. And it's obviously something that we need to do as children so we can figure out where the hell we are and interact with the world. But as we get older, it gets out of control. And we lose our own identity to the paradigms. And, we can also make money with some of the paradigms, but in the end, you don't want to lose who you are as a human being by doing it. 163, nuclear holocaust. For those of us that question whether or not atomic bombs exist, it's an interesting proposal to discuss a nuclear holocaust, but this episode goes with the fact that they do exist, or the idea that they do exist, and starts to analyze how absurd the use of nuclear weapons are. And so the idea that we're currently right now, as of this recording, worried about North Korea, who doesn't have a nuclear bomb among them. If they ever get accused of detonating a nuclear bomb, I can guarantee you it's a false flag coming from somewhere else. Essentially, this just breaks it down. 164, this episode's done extremely well. It's called The Moon. The moon, if you haven't delved into it, is an extremely mysterious object. If you watch the episode that's coming up here called Do Craters Exist? We'll get even further into this, but virtually every single thing about the moon doesn't make any sense at all. And so I basically itemized that. 165 has done extremely well, which is Moon Landing Hoax Part 2. I can assure you there'll be Part 3 in Season 3 for sure, if not a couple. We didn't go to the moon. Really sorry. If you haven't seen the Moon Hoax video Part 1 in Season 1, you'll definitely want to see that before you watch this episode. I've been debriefed at least once by folks as deep in NASA as you can possibly get. They said, look, we tried, we couldn't, so we faked it. So did everybody else who faked all their other moon shit. 166, entitlement. This is all about those social justice warriors, about the fabric of society that wants to essentially give up on ever becoming anything because society's fucked up education. So kids are getting these $125,000 debts with no opportunity or potential of getting hired. And so their fallback plan is to hire someone like Bernie Sanders to pass out popsicles every single day so they don't have to work. 167, the mental coup. The mental coup is about that emotion you have when you think you need to do something drastic to change the world or change your life, and it's scary. That you don't think you should be having that thought because, oh gosh, I just thought a violent thought or something like that. It's not all about violence or anything, but it's just about the notion of engaging your mind at that level of responsibility that unfortunately is happening on our watch. The world is screwed up on our watch. We need to do things to fix it. 168, creating the universe. One of the exercises you'll hear me do throughout all the shows is we pretend that we are hired to do something. And once you put yourself in the shoes of being hired to take care of something, it changes the entire interpretation of everything that you think is in the universe. So we take on the job of creating the universe within this episode, break it down. I'm actually kind of proud of this one. 169, Morgellons disease. Well, for those of you who know, this is a full breakdown of Morgellons disease. For those of you who don't know, this is a breakdown of what is said to exist. Again, I have never met anyone who actually has it, but I've seen pretty convincing specials on TV about it, but who knows? It could be all bullshit. But it's this idea that there's a fibrous growth that comes out of a crystal using the piezo effect. We think the crystals might be coming out of either food supplies or out of chemtrails, and it can create these cylindrical, wormy substances in your mind. We have found supposedly patented nanotechnology for bioengineering in human beings as a result of researching Morgellons disease, but who knows? 170, state of mind. This is right up there with patience, with positivity. If someone doesn't remind you that everything that you think at any one point in time is a state of mind, then you may not have the the manual transmission on your consciousness that you really, really want. So it talks about the state change in your mind from second to second. Have you ever been completely euphoric and then been completely angry? Well, there's a state change in your mind that makes you switch between the two. If you recognize this is happening, you gain a tremendous amount of control over your life. So that's what this episode's about. 171, Electrical Universe. Super proud of this episode. There's a whole set of emerging cosmologists that are now rethrowing the creation of the universe in a completely electrical substrate. This is using plasma energy, using higher constructs like electrons we use for electricity. But it breaks it down, and it talks about all the influences just within our solar system of what that implication means. 172, Flat Earth Revisited. So this is an episode just kind of rehashing and updating all of the current theories and thinking and anomalies that the Flat Earth community has to deal with. 173, Pendulum of Belief. I love this one because it talks about the oxymorons that people hold within their systems. They believe one thing but not another thing, right? They are willing to believe that there are alien bases on the dark side of the moon, but they can't possibly believe that the moon landing was a hoax. So they're able to believe absolutely extreme, ridiculous theories and not ones that make complete sense that you could back up with physics and engineering. 174, Benefits of Flat Earth. Very simple. As one of my buddies said, you can ask someone why they think it's a globe, and they barely have any answers. If you ask them why they think it's flat, they have hours and hours and hours of proofs. And so there is a great benefit to studying flat Earth, to increase your level of science, to realize that NASA and GPL have been lying generally about everything they've ever claimed. 175, an AI universe. This is an extension of Finding the Matrix. This is another deep dive on the artificial intelligence that we think we see within the universe. It's sort of a precursor to another episode that's coming up here. 176, Destiny. This analyzes whether or not we actually have them, whether or not we can create them, what it means to develop one, to pursue it, and essentially just talks about the anatomy, hopefully giving you more control over your goals in life by breaking it down. 177, the Flat Earth Simulator. Well, this goes in and says the Flat Earth is the case, but what does that mean? What is it built out of? Is there a hard shell above? Is there a water bubble above? What does it mean to be inside this thing? What is it trying to accomplish? Because it suggests that we're in a very intelligent apparatus with very intense objectives. Next one's a special report called Doom and Gloom. This one did extremely well, and I think it's very poetic at this point in history that we do have a lot of folks that are very doom and gloom. They just are getting to a point where they're saying, oh my God, this whole society's all screwed up, simply because the fake news zeroes in on a couple Berkeley protests, a couple weird murders here and then. It makes you feel like the whole world is exactly the same way. When you were a kid, it rained outside and you thought the whole world was experiencing rain. And then you find out, oh no, it's just your little circle of life. So hopefully this pries people out of that. 178, Taking Action. It's an extension of the other episode, which really just again says, look, you most likely are sitting in your home with at least the feeling that there's something that you should be doing that would benefit society, benefit you, and make you more happy. And so this is an episode that helps you dive inside yourself and find those elements and go for it. 179, UFOs. This talks about UFOs, talks about all the sightings that I'm aware of and the various species of the sightings, and I think dismisses a few of the sightings due to plasma ball energy escaping the mantle of Earth. But it just talks about it straight up. 180, Entrepreneurship. All I can say is I've been an entrepreneur since I was a little kid. I have been in and out of all kinds of different business deals. This episode is for you if you are on the precipice of starting a business, or you've started a business and you'd like a little bit more opinions about what you might be able to do to increase your productivity and profit. 181, Santa Claus. I had fun with this episode, but it's all about the idea that we struggle with whether or not to raise children with a belief of Santa Claus in this modern age, because it is you as a parent lying to your child to create them a little moment of euphoric magic, which is great when they're young. But as they get older, what does it do? It teaches them in the end that adults will lie to them on just a sub-theme. It also preps them to believe in a religious deity for the rest of their life, right? If you go to the episode I think it's like episode 4 of season 1, Why We Believe, which is one of my favorite episodes I ever did, it really just simply says a lot of this imaginary stuff we teach our kids is the precursor to say, you have to give up all of these, but you can keep Jesus Christ in your future, whatever deity you believe. So we've primed them on fiction, and we let them, again, become subjugated to religions as they move forward. 182, Fragility of Man. This subject comes up all the time among my friends, where we talk about the fact that humanity is the most fragile being on this planet, and yet we run it. How's that possible? So, enough said. 183 is another dive into Flat Earth. It's called the Flat Earth Dilemma. I'm actually pretty proud of this episode as well, but this talks about the idea that, for those of us who are sort of on the fence, we definitely see the point of the Flat Earth folks. There's other theories that really seem very heliocentric. If you're on the fence, you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. How do you live every single day not knowing where you are? There's a lot of folks that are pro-flat Earth, but they say, look, I don't know that we're actually on a disc. I don't really know that there's a dome overhead and all that stuff, right? 184, Gnosticism. Now, the definition of Gnosticism and Gnostics has had many redefinitions over the years. Various groups claim different benefits from it, and so the definitions are very obscure. What my current take on Gnosticism is that you're able to draw out of the universe the very truth of the universe. And if you gear up your life to communicate with the universe spiritually, you will get the answers that you're looking for. And I mean, as revolutionary as you can possibly conceive, it will reward you. But if you don't know it's there, you won't go to the trough to get the information. So this episode is to teach you that you can do that. 185, Capitulation. This is the name of the game, right? Give up. Give up and give in, because, boy, you can be a part of the tribe that the fake news makes you believe is really there, which it's not, right? So this helps you recognize where you might have capitulated, recognize where other people are capitulating in a tribal sense, and to keep yourself out of that realm, and perhaps help society stay free of this problem. 186, Dream People. I love this episode. This is about looking at everyone you meet in your dreams and realizing that they're not full-fledged human beings. They're actually these weird apparitions of beings. I don't mean visually, but I mean spiritually and physically. They're always people you seem to know, but you don't know them. Sometimes they are your relatives and your friends, but this is really talking about everyone else that you don't know in your dreams. 187. This one did extremely well. This is called What If You're Wrong? And this just reminds us all that as sure as we are about things, it's really good to keep a good auxiliary connection to humility just in case you're wrong. And it's healthy to always look at both sides of the fence. You'll find that when you're in conversations with people about things you're passionate about, whether or not you absolutely believe in your heart of hearts it's flat, it's nice to be able to see it from their perspective the entire time, such that you don't come off as a jerk, right? A closed-minded jerk. We don't want closed-mindedness to follow open-mindedness, right? 188 is rather esoteric, but it's called Solutions. And it's really about the process of how do we engage society and start trying to find solutions. I have another episode I'm putting out as 199, which is Saving Humanity. It's going to be an advanced discussion on the same thing. But this sort of gets the pump primed. 189, as I said, fake news. This goes right at the jugular of what makes news fake. A lot of the, I think, cautions we need to have about taking news from folks, and to know that we don't need all the information of the world. We simply don't. 190, very important for me personally, which is the question why. It's good to always ask the question why, but in the end, sometimes it's used as a defense mechanism to say, I don't want to listen to what you're saying, so I'm just going to throw out why. And I know that you don't really know the reason why everything happens, so As long as I can find one attribute of your claim that you don't know the full explanation of, I don't need to listen to you. So we talk about that defense mechanism. 191, meeting an alien. This is a result of a conversation I had with a young woman recently, and she said, look, that part freaks me out. I'm not sure society's ready for it. I want to be ready for it. So I take meeting an alien and I slow it all the way down, and I reiterate, what on earth would they need from us? Probably not that much. 192 is policies of the universe. This is about the fact that the universe seems to have a lot of rules. And once we realize what those rules are, we can start questioning them, like, why can't ghosts show up and say hello? There's a rule, right? We don't have our dead relatives walking in the room with us constantly and having conversations about what it was like to be alive. God doesn't come down and talk to us. There's rules, there's policies, and that's what this episode's about. Next one up is a special report. Unfortunately, it's about elite pedophilia, but it talks about Pizzagate. It talks about all the implications of the stories that we've seen break over the years that have been covered up, not reported on by the fake news to protect these motherfuckers. It talks about the fact that they hide themselves in law enforcement. They hide themselves in military agencies so they never have to worry about getting caught because they control all the investigations. 193, reincarnation. This is essentially why I believe for sure we are reincarnated. 194, horoscopes. Spelled horoscopes. This is about folks that wake up every single day and relinquish full control of their life to arbitrary bullshit means of determining what's going to happen with their life. Instead of controlling it, which is the gift we've been given as sentient beings, people give up. And they give up because it has tradition around it. So I'm trying to convince you guys to control your own life. 195, toxins. This is heavily requested. Tell me what you think is toxic, what you think is okay, so we can stay healthy. 196, program universe. This is an extension off of policies of the universe, which is essentially we're running a program right now. Whether or not you like it or not, there's every single rule of the universe that holds this place together and gives us the ability to communicate is based on a program. If you're an engineer, you know this program is utterly and completely perfect. We don't see flaws. We don't drive down the street and all of a sudden we're in Tibet and then all of a sudden we're in China and then we're back to where we were. There's no flaws. Mandela effect, if it is real, might be an organic indication of some flexibility in the program, but I have my doubts. 197, do craters exist? This is tied into flat Earth, but it's really related to the idea that the moon and every other body, especially Earth, has these things we call craters, except they are completely symmetrical. They are round. They are not elliptical. They do not have skid marks. There's no visual indication or physics indication that these things could possibly be craters. I think they're volcanoes. I think it's the inside erupting. 198. Why flat Earth? Why flat Earth? The idea is, if flat Earth exists, it's done for a very intentional reason, right? Why? That's all we ask. And we go through every implication. If you were the creator, whether you be an alien or a god, why would you need to do this? What is the outcome that you're looking for? God supposedly knows everything, so there's no mystery for God. Why would God create us? Why would God put us in here? If it's an alien, what could they get from looking at us, right? Perhaps they're trying to learn something about themselves. And 199 is saving humanity. And this is going to be an episode. It's not released as of this recording. That is going to be about what can we do to really increase the fabric of society in a way, or strengthen fabric of society in a way that actually immediately benefits society. And it's going to start from the self and move its way through to actually interacting with society. So, for those of you who have joined me through all the episodes of Season 2, super duper appreciate it. Season 3 is already amassing episodes. I'm just working on probably the intro. I am going to take probably a couple more weeks just as a break because I want to really think it through. Part of the way that I do anything in my life, if I'm trying to bring something to finality, one of the little tricks I play with myself is to think of it finished, and I'm looking back on it 5 years from now. and what would be my regrets? A lot of time regret is based on the idea that we didn't put as much effort in as we could have. So you look back and you go, God, I really should have worked harder. So my commitment for season 3, as I put on the Facebook group, if you haven't joined the Facebook group, I'm going to start posting little messages to you guys in the Facebook group that are going to be private to that group. But I'm going to put more research in. I'm going to just increase the digging, and we're going to have some fun. So anyway, if you have been, thank you for joining me. DeepThoughtsRadio.com for all of the feeds. There's video if you're on audio. There's audio if you're on video. It's on iTunes as well. So hope you join us. Thanks for visiting, and I will see you in the next episode. Take care of yourself and someone else. Over now.